Everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So good morning for those of you who just came in. Thank you for joining us for our August Quick Tips. For those of you whom are new, I'm Morgan Stentz. I work with the Wyoming State Archives and I'm the former Roving Archivist. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the Wyoming State Archives' YouTube page. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for today. This program is only made possible thanks to the American Heritage Center, the Wyoming State Archives, and the Wyoming State Historical Records Advisory Board. And this program is funded by grants made available through the Wyoming SHRAB by the National Historical Publications and Records Commission and administered by the Wyoming State Archives through the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. Before we get into the topic for today, I'd like to ask everyone to save your questions for the end or place them in the chat for us to go over at the end. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's session, Processing Archivist Robin Everett from the Wyoming State Archives.
In getting started with an oral history, you have to know what an oral history is. And the oral history stems from the tradition of passing information of importance from one generation to the next. It's a technique for generating and preserving original, historical, interesting information. It's considered a primary source material, and it from persons' recollections through planned, recorded interviews. The method of interviewing is used to preserve their voices and their memories. It's a tool we can all use to engage with and learn from friends, family, communities, different generations. It captures their unique history and perspective in their own words. So to follow the agenda that Morgan put out in her email, that was the oral, sorry, I should have clicked to that screen first. Getting started, legal essentials, interview techniques, navigating the interview, and equipment is one that I added at the end. You need defining your focus and goals of your project. What's your topic? What do you want to learn? You need to do some research. This is one of my favorites, but it's a mouthful. Know the who, what, when, where, and why of why you are doing the project. Reach out to others, network, and identify a community. The focus of your project should be clear. If you don't know what you want to achieve through the project, your interviewees will not either. Do your research beforehand. Know what your topic is about. You'll need to do this research and this before you even start the project. The research will allow you to ask more thoughtful questions and may provide you information for follow-up questions during your interviews. You need to know who you're talking to and what you're talking about. On the who, what, when, where, and why, this is a mouthful, however, it can be broken down by individual items. Who are you interviewing? Why are you interviewing? When are you going to do the interview? When is the interviewee or the narrator, let's call him the narrator from now on, involved in the project that you are working on? So those types of things are what you're going to need to know. You want to reach out to others to network. You can talk to other people to help identify potential people for interviewing contacts. You can also reach out to institutions to see if they will work with you or help you work on your project. They may have information to help you with your project that you can do your research on. And they also may be able to work with you on storing and preserving your project, which is a huge goal for all of this, is to store, preserve, and provide access. In identifying a community, I have to admit, I had to think about this one because we're all part of communities, many communities really, depending upon the situation. You may be part of this community or a part of a different community. So in identifying your focus and goal should help you to identify the community that you're working within and help you identify and find out any other goals that may fall into place of your project. And you may find that what you thought was a goal has fallen off. I know I'm working on a personal project right now that involves water rights. And so I'm trying to contact people that have worked on that case. And right now, I've had to go back and change my questions a couple of times so that it helps me focus on what I want to get out of the project. So that's helping. And then in identifying the community, I'm looking at who was involved in the case, what was their role, what was the outcome for them, that type of thing. So you want to look for and create community ties. You want to look outside the box or outside the window. Is there a community or an organization or a company that you could partner with? Once you've identified your project, look outside, whether it be an organization or an institution. Organizations and companies may facilitate connecting you with members or employees. They may also provide funding for travel or equipment. You don't know if you don't ask, right? Institutions such as libraries, archives, museums are places where you can deposit your project when you're done. This will provide access and preservation of the project. If the project does not fit their collection policy, they may suggest somewhere else. And going back to my project that I'm working on, I hope to be able to deposit my oral history project in the state archives. They have a lot of records relating to this water right case. And so my personal project, I feel, will be a huge boom, I guess is the word, to add to those records that they have. You'll want to make connections before you start the project. There's a lot of planning that has to go in before you get started. I can't stress that enough. Just to say, oh, I want to do this, and then this is this is where it's going to be. But you have to follow a process. And you want to tell your narrators, they're the interviewees, remember, that when, where, and how. When will the interview be available? Where will it be available? And how will others access it? Accessibility is a huge thing. It's the way that it's the main means of the oral history is sharing the information, right? So in order to get started, you want to maintain a cohesive workflow. I have to tell you, this made me laugh, because if there's anything I don't do is I don't maintain a cohesive workflow. I have a tendency to jump all over the place, write notes down on small pieces of paper, stick them in a folder, and then wonder what I did with them. So I can't stress enough to establish a process and maintain that process. Depending on the logistics of your project, you may want to create a spreadsheet or 2 or 3. Who have you contacted? How have they responded? Did they fill out the consent forms? If you're going to be traveling to different locations, you might have the contacts under the different locations, and that would save you time on your travel. Have they sent the consent form back? Have you shared the questions? That type of thing. By maintaining this workflow, you won't be backtracking, contacting the same person twice when they've already responded. You'll increase your productivity and be more efficient in your work. You can see at a glance the status of your project just by looking at the spreadsheet. Who knows, by doing this, some aspects of this may spill over into other parts of your life. Just a little thought there. Keep notes. This is somewhat of a catch-all. Keep notes about your subject, and the narrator. Notes about the subject in regards to the narrator? Is there something special you want to touch on with this individual that other narrators may not be a part of? So that falls into, how does your narrator fit into your project, and what is their role in that particular part of the project? There's legalities involved in oral history. You have to have a consent form, usage, access, if you want to provide them beforehand, on the day of, and how to maintain a workflow. So much of what I'm going to talk about is directly from the Oral History Association website best practices. If at all possible, prior to the interview, the oral historian should meet with the narrator, whether it's in person, on the phone, or virtually. This will help you build a rapport with the narrator, discuss the projects, the benefits of their preparation, and of their participation. This also gives the narrator an opportunity to express any concerns they may have. Just by visiting with them, you get to, if you can do it in person or virtually so that they can see your face, you can see their face, it helps quite a bit. Legally, you'll need to obtain a signed consent form from the narrator. You may want to provide a copy of this during the pre-meeting, via mail, or on the day of the interview. The form should include the project name, the narrator's name, the oral historian's name, and the date. It also should include a statement regarding allowing use and access and where the project will be housed. Here again, depending upon the logistics of your project and how many interviews you're doing, if you're set up to do just one interview, you might want to have the consent form with you at the before the interview is started, or you can mail it to them beforehand. But also, if you're doing several interviews, you might want to bring along someone else. Morgan and I were part of a big project for Veterans in Focus, and Morgan split up doing a lot of the paperwork and taking care of the signing of the sheets and everything. Then they could just slip in and do the interview with me. And then sometimes we would flip back and forth. But the consent form is a very important thing. It's a legal thing, really. And if you're working with an institution like the archives, they may have a form already. And some of this slide flows back to previous slides. In maintaining the workflow, you will know who has the consent form signed and returned form, and you may have notes from your pre-interview conversation also regarding this, okay? Interview techniques. We're going to talk about knowing your stuff, preparing effective questions, building a rapport, and then a little bit on guide, don't lead. In preparing, ask informed questions. The interviewer, for the interview, should be familiar with the person, topic, and the historical context by doing research in primary and secondary sources, as well as through social engagement with individuals and communities. So do your research. Know what your topic is, know who your narrator is going to be, and lay out those questions in that manner. And this will also help you, like I said earlier, also help you lay out the questions. You can prepare an outline of themes to be covered with general questions to be asked, along with asking open-ended questions and actively listening. The oral historian should ask follow-up questions seeking additional clarification, elaborations, and reflections, such as, tell me more about that, or describe that, or what do you remember when that happened? You can choose potential narrators based on the relevance of their experiences, but you should strive to identify and incorporate as many diverse voices as possible. And this is one thing that on my personal project that I'm working on right now I have a list of about 10 people, and they are all lawyers. Nothing against lawyers, but I want to get people that were involved in the water rights case that had to go through changes and identification of their water rights and how that impacted them. Your rapport with the narrator should be professional. Remember to respect the rights of the narrators and the narrator's option to decline to answer or to discuss certain topics. And remember, try to make it more of a conversation. I kind of like to call this casual professional, but you don't want to get too casual with them. And you want to, most of all, respect their decision to decline or not want to talk about, or to say, ask for a pause. Okay. In navigating the interview, here again, I can't stress the fact that effective questions, rapport, open-ended prompts, and comfortably guide the conversation. Did I just talk about this? Anyway, through the preparation, it enables the oral historian to know what questions to ask. You may have 4 to 6 general questions, such as, how has the Bighorn River adjudication affected your day-to-day life? Do you have a positive experience to share? What drove you to enroll in the military? This kind of research will help you with follow-up questions and may allow you to jog the memory of the narrator in regards to names and dates. A good rapport is established with the narrator by approaching them properly. During the interview, your rapport with the narrator should be casual. And remember, this is a conversation. Listen closely. Don't interrupt. Following up on details or unexpected avenues of information. Open-ended prompts, like I said earlier, tell me more about that. How did that affect you? This is following up on the details or of unexpected avenues or information that were shared by the narrator during your talk. You want to comfortably guide them. Your questions should be asked in such a manner to guide the narrator to share their information. You don't want to lead the conversation. You want to just guide them down the path to share the information. In navigating the interview, there may be an awkward pause, and you may be talking about sensitive topics, but you want to keep the focus on the narrator's story. In an oral history interview, an awkward pause is often just the narrator gathering deep memories, taking a pause to reflect. Instead of rushing to fill the silence, embrace the quiet. Use nonverbal encouragement like nodding and give them time to think or feel without interruption. The Oral History Association recommends sharing your questions beforehand. This way, the narrator is not surprised. They are just as prepared as you are. When dealing with the sensitive topics, pay close attention to the narrator and their body language. Are they becoming overwhelmed? Are they struggling to respond? Are they fidgety? Offer to pause if they need to. In both of these situations, let the narrator know beforehand the interview can be paused at any time for them to collect their thoughts and regain composure. Your main goal of this oral history project is to keep the focus on the narrator's story. Let them talk. You should maintain eye contact and be relaxed. If you're nervous, the narrator will be nervous, and we'll see that and could be nervous also. So the last slide I have is on equipment. And I chose only to focus on the digital age because that's what we're in, and that's what a lot of people have, whether it be using your phone to record it or an oral history kit. We're very fortunate to be in the digital age, if you're partnering with an institution, they may have an oral history kit that you can check out, or depending on your circumstances, you may have your own, AKA your phone. The recording device should be unobtrusive, should sit between you and the narrator to collect both and record both voices. You need to know how to use it during and after the interview. You want to clear the recording and want a clear recording and have no glitches. Make sure you have good batteries, they're charged, or alternate power. Make certain you have plenty of storage for the recording. After the interview, you need to know how to access and upload the interview. If there's a user guide, read it. That's all I have. Any questions or comments? Are you guys there?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What is typically the most difficult aspect for you whenever you're doing an oral history that you have to remind yourself to remember to do each time?
For me, it's, I kind of freak out on the research aspect of it. So I also, like I said, that maintain the flow, the workflow, the comprehensive workflow, because I can get excited about making contact with somebody and then just totally space out to put it down on a spreadsheet and make sure that I have that information. But also each time going in, I have to have a little, almost doing so many interviews that we did on the Veterans Focus project helped a lot to refresh on how I do things. But also I have somewhat of a little mental list or a checklist to do while I'm in the interview, to do the introduction, to say the date, to welcome them, to do a closing, and then also to make sure that we have the consent forms and that type of thing. So it's a wide range, but I'm a list maker also. So having that list is kind of my go-to thing. Does that answer your question, Jamie?
Yeah, it sounds like mostly remembering to kind of move through your process. And
Yes.
if you find someone unique you'd like to talk to note it down so you don't miss them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I have another one, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry if I missed it, but are you the person who ends up editing the content afterwards, or is that someone else?
Good question, because when we did the Veterans of Focus, Morgan did the editing. So if you have the capability to do that, you can, and that involves software that you may or may not have access to, or the institution, if you're partnering with an institution, they may have it. But then also transcription of the oral history is another big thing, and I apologize, I spaced that out. But transcribing it, how is it, how do you get to transcribe it without having to listen to it 95 times? And there is transcription software out there that will help you with it. Yeah, that's a training thing. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to have to go through to do my personal project, because I know that there's a lot of cutout and takeout on any kind of recording. And also if you're going to use your phone, there's video on there also, right? So that should be included in your consent form, that your video and audio recording, and that both of those will be made available.
As you're having your, sorry, she put her hand up. Oh, wait.
Hi, sorry. Just have a quick question. If I missed this, forgive me. But do you sometimes give people like a questionnaire, like give them a heads up on what you want to talk about in general, before you do the interviews, just to get them, kind of thinking about what you really want them to include in the oral histories?
Yes, I give them I mentioned that when I was in the preparation and in the pre-interview, that you should be able to give them a list of your general questions, and you usually have 4 to 6 general questions, because this lets them know what your project is and what your goals are, and then you're not surprising them by dropping these questions on them. So yeah, and that gives them a time to reflect and look at how they want to answer them. Them being very general questions, then that also will allow you to do follow-up during the conversation or during the interview that neither one of you may expect.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody next?
The other question I had when you were talking about editing, so if you are actively having a conversation with someone and it's recording and they say they don't want it in, do you make some kind of note for the editor if it's someone else, hey, cut this out? Or how do you note that for you to remove a section?
That would become apparent when they're doing, I think that would become apparent when they are editing, that they would rather have this section cut out. And I'm going to defer to Morgan because she did the editing on our Veterans in Focus. And I don't believe we had that happen in any of our interviews, but I know that there were pauses and stuff like that in our interviews where she went in and cleaned them up and deleted those pauses. Correct, Morgan? Oh, Morgan says her microphone is disconnected. She's going to have to take a minute. But yes, Jamie, that's what I would do. I would go in and edit that out, because the narrator is giving you permission to use their story and have their story. But if they share something and then realize that they don't want it in there, they'll tell you, and you should be able to edit that out.
It may just take more of a conversation with the person in front of us, because I guess I'd want to be clear, like, which section do you fully not want? So I make sure I cut out everything that needs cut, kind of thing.
Yes. And you can have them, some people have them view the recording or listen to the recording beforehand, view it if it's video, and then the narrator can tell you yay or nay on what you've taken out or what you haven't taken out.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome. I love when technology decides to revolt. Anyway, so a lot of the times we did have 1 or 2 that interviewees during the Veterans in Focus project that they wanted pieces of their interview cut out. So a lot of the time I would talk to them, and most of the time if they knew they wanted like a video cut, I would stop recording all the way around. And then once they said it was okay to start recording again, that's where I would pick up, especially if someone was getting very emotional and needed some time to calm down and like take a step away. So that's one way I recommend going about it. Also, usually you can tell in the demeanor changes when they're talking about something heavy that they wanted that portion to be cut out. So that's also like a retrospective way. As for video editing and the audio editing, there are a couple of programs that I'll recommend. We used Premiere Pro mostly because they did not want to keep our data. So we got to keep any of the data that was licensed to us. And the nice thing about that is not only could I edit the audio and the video together, I could also do a rough AI transcription. Now, I will say it is AI and it is temperamental. So not everything was entirely correct or accurate. So then I recommend having you or someone else go through and clean it up, which does mean that manual, like listening, stopping, starting, going through and editing. But stay as true to the transcription as possible, because it's not our words as the interviewees or interviewers and the editors. They're not our words. This is someone else's experience, and you want to preserve their voice. So that might mean creating weird contractions and not fully finishing sentences. And I'm sure the transcription of me describing this right now is not great, but stay as true to that as possible. Now, Premiere Pro is part of the Microsoft suite, so that does require a license. Audacity is free, and you can use that for audio editing. There's also, I have used Canva before to edit videos, but you do have to have the whatever tier option they have. There's also other programs that I've used. I also have used otter.ai for that transcription stuff, but they wanted to keep like part of the data for their own training purposes. So we at the State Archives did not agree. I used that personally for a different project. So there's a few. I can also come up with a few others. And I'll also send I wonder, it's been a minute since I looked at the oral history page. Okay, I did not recommend any transcription service on there. But I do have an oral history resource page that this session will be uploaded to later on. So I'll put that in chat as well.
And also, Jamie, during the your pre-interview with the narrator, you can stress to them that they have the right to, to say no, or to decline to answer a question, or to pause and reinforce that rapport with them, that you're respecting who they are and what they're talking about, and that they have that opportunity to pause or say, can we stop? Can you take this out, type of thing. Yeah. Have any of you done oral history interviews? Wow, there's an awkward pause.
I have not, but I am going to hopefully be doing them. So I'm interested.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a project in mind, or?
We have a couple different ideas. So for, I guess, context, I am the collections manager at the Riverton Museum in Riverton, Wyoming.
Oh, wow.
We have some really interesting local people that just have stories we'd love to keep. This year, we put on an Asian American and Pacific Islander American display, and there are some people who contributed objects and items from their life that I think would be really cool to go through. If they were willing to do an oral history, I'm not sure, but they're sort of in my mind as one of the options. The first site director of our museum is still around, and it would be really interesting to grab his oral history, before he goes, and just like a spattering of different voices that maybe we don't typically have things on is what I'm interested in showcasing.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. The water rights case that I'm looking at involves people in Riverton, so I might stop by when I'm in town.
You should. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any other questions for Robin? I'm going to take that as a no. Well, thank you, Robin, so much for presenting, even through all of the technical fun that we've had today. And thank you, everyone, for attending and for bearing with us as we sort everything out. This was super practical, and I love just talking about oral histories with you, Robin. So this will be the end of our session today. Join us next month on September 11th. We will have some discussions about the use of story maps and how you can embed that as a exhibit practice or a display of digital materials or just landmark materials throughout your cultural heritage organization. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.